Why don't males talk about their mental health? Let's see. So, to the cohort of men who don't talk about their health, we ask, what were the underlying reasons? 40% says, I've learned to deal with it. 36% says, I don't want to burden anyone. 29% says, I'm too embarrassed. 20% says there's a negative stigma around this type of thing. 17% says, I don't want to admit I need support. 16%, I don't want to appear weak. I have no one to talk to, for 14%. And I have been mocked by my significant other, 40%. So let's talk about the last one. I have been mocked by my significant other. That is probably the number one thing that I've heard men say for the reason that they don't share their feelings, is because when they are vulnerable and they do share their feelings with their significant other, they are then mocked or belittled, or it's brought back up in another conversation. And they just don't feel comfortable anymore after facing that ridicule, that criticism, the interruptions when they're trying to tell you about their emotions. They don't want to continue to feel less than because they simply said, this is how I feel. And we have to be very careful with that, because we do live in a world where men are heavily stigmatized about their mental health, and they need so much help. 76.6% is the male suicide rate right now, and rising. That's almost 80%. That's a lot of people, right? That's a lot of men. We have done such a bad job as a society to tell them that they can't feel, they can't express emotions, don't even sneeze to the left too hard, or you'll be looked at weird. There is a gap. There's a gap between what we need to do as people in this society. There's a gap as how we as women can show up for our men and help them be able to express themselves more and not feel so weird for doing so. Let's talk about the greet when they come home, right? Or just understanding what they may go through as a man out in this world with having to fight the world, and then also having to come home and then fight their significant other, who is sometimes waiting at the door because, like, I don't know, maybe the husband didn't do something small like taking out the trash, or they didn't do something right with the kids, and the devil's just egging them on, and they're just like all in their feelings. They're talking about their wife or girlfriend, and just egging them on, like the devil's just egging them on. So when they come to the door, the first thing that they're met with is opposition, when they just finished fighting with the world, and then they're going to come home and fight with their woman. So let me tell you what happens when that continues to occur, because I've talked to so many men. I've talked to them at the barbershops and out and about, at the gym, you name it, at the restaurant, wherever, and they say they don't like going home. They don't like going home. They'd rather go to a bar. They'd rather go to the gym and stay extra long. They'd rather stay at work, things like that. And I'm not saying that there aren't things that have to be addressed within the home setting. Absolutely address those things. But also finding proper times to address certain things so they can be better received, I think is good as well. Because what happens is, you get in this argument and you start going at each other, and then you're not even, because your cortisol levels and your stress levels are so high, you're not even processing. Your auditory processing system is not even processing your auditory system is not processing. That's what I should have said. But, you know, no one's really comprehending what each other is saying. Sometimes, you know, arguments are going to happen, right? Because you're married, you know, maybe you've been married for a short time, long time. Those things will come up, they will happen. But also trying to find those times where you can both sit down and have an adult conversation and saying, this is how I feel. This is why I felt this way. This is what I would like to have as a solution. And both of you guys share. And then you come together. And then, you know, with what you feel is best. Sometimes you may not always agree, but I definitely want you to pray on it. Pray as you're talking. And, you know, I pray in my head when I'm talking to people and asking God to give me the right words of what to say so that and it's not that I'm worried about them being offended. I just want them to be able to receive the information in a way that will help the situation and not hurt it. That's all. So the significant other can, you know, really make or break their husband, coming from the woman perspective, right? Because we're talking about supporting men with their mental health. And sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, but just, you know, showing up is just so super important, right? Don't need to fight with you and the world all the time. There are going to be disagreements. Yes, pray on it. Use your prayer closet to fight the enemy, because we're not fighting with flesh, right? We're not fighting with flesh. We're fighting with principalities and all the other evil spirit, as Paul says, that are behind the situation sometimes, or a person. We just have to be mindful of that. You know, the devil hates marriage, right? Look at Adam and Eve and how he came and tempted them and just kind of caused chaos. And they had everything beautiful, paradise-like. What else could you get? And he still came in the middle of all of that because he hates the idea of marriage, because a covenant as powerful as marriage is amazing, right? Being under the covenant of marriage is just astronomical. And I don't think some people realize how beautiful that is, to be in something that God created and will protect. If you are humble enough to say, you know, maybe I didn't greet him the best way as a wife, you know, maybe I did say something that hurt his feelings, and being able to go back and then apologize for that, knowing that you had a part in the argument or starting the argument or what have you. There's a lot of self-sacrifice. There's a lot of letting go of pride. There's going to be some apologizing. There's going to be so many things in marriage that we may not feel comfortable doing or even want to do sometimes. But, you know, do you want to be right all the time, or do you want to be married? Because you can't, you can try, but it'll be super hard for you to want to win every argument or be right about everything, or, you know, what have you. Protect your marriage with prayer. Build your wall with prayer, like Prophet Nehemiah when he was building the wall. And of course you're going to come up against distractions, right? And who was distracting him? Was it Tobias and Sanballat? And they were like writing him all these letters, like, we need you to come down off that wall and tend to these matters. He was like, I'm not coming down for y'all. Absolutely not. He continued to do what he knew needed to be done. We have to continue to pray, because if he did not build that wall, what happened? The enemy can come right on in And that's what's happening with a lot of marriages these days. Sometimes we're giving up too easy. Sometimes there are unspoken expectations. We expect the other person to just read our minds and know what we desire or what we want. And that's just not true. That's just not going to happen, right? We have to be verbal. We have to communicate all the things that are going on in our minds. Finances, that's a big one when you're talking about marriage, and understanding how to budget, understanding who pays what bill, understanding who will you get a joint bank account, a separate bank account, and then a joint one together, or does all your money go into one account? Like, these are also questions people should be asking before they get married. And I know that you are, when you're dating, you're enjoying the person, right? You're enjoying the moments with them. And so sometimes we forget to do the preliminary work that it takes to build a strong foundation, because we are more focused on the emotional part rather than the practical sometimes. And we have to be able to do that, just to make sure we're covering ourselves. So as women, we are the gatekeepers, right? We have to be the watchmen. We have to watch over our families. We have to make sure that our man is being taken care of in all areas, okay? All areas. To make sure that the house is clean, that we're keeping ourselves to a standard as well, that we're praying every single day, whether he has completed his duties, his chores, whether you like him in that moment or don't care or whatever, because for better or for worse, and sometimes it can get worse, but we still have to show up and pray. Marriage isn't easy. I really had to get my head out of the clouds about what marriage looked like, and I just know that it's not going to be a cakewalk all the time. Like, sometimes you're going to have to, like I said earlier, do things you don't want. There's just going to be so much within that, but it's also such a beautiful union where you do get to have a companion, and also glorify God with your marriage. And if God chooses to bless you with children, birth those and raise up a generation of, young men or young women who can go and possibly change the world. All of those things are so cool and so amazing and so beautiful. But we have to understand how to support our men with their mental health, allowing them and creating a safe space for them to be able to share. Sorry, that just came to me, Holy Spirit. Creating that safe space. So that means when they are talking, we are lips closed, right? Like, you don't have to solve everything. Sometimes the guys have said that they just want their woman to listen. They just want someone to listen. So there's no criticism, no clapbacks, no or comebacks, whatever. There's no judgment for what they're saying. There's no interruptions. I think the interruption part, we have to be comfortable with silence as well. Sometimes we want to jump in before they've even finished their thought, or we want to, put our 2 cents in. But when I was a school counselor and my boys would come in and they would talk to me, sometimes they have to process things a little bit longer, because remember, we're not fully teaching them how to be expressive. If you can even see the feelings wheel back there and look at all of the feelings, I used to take my kids through that all the time so that they could learn or be better with describing how they feel, building their vocabulary, and not just saying, oh, I'm okay, or I'm feeling fine today, when they're really not. So this is, the feelings wheel is also good to help kids and adults as well, so that when they want to express themselves, they can do so. but still continuing to understand that creating that safe space is key to supporting your man, supporting your husband, supporting your boyfriend, supporting your son, your uncle, whoever, is in your life. They need support. And I know that society has taught us that they have to be strong and stoic and all these other things. And sure, we want our men to be strong because they are essentially like the leaders of our household. However, there has to be a line between them being strong and then the male suicide rate being 76.6% and rising. Somewhere along there, they have to say or be able to share or say, this is how I feel. This is how I'm feeling today. I need your support, and be able to get that from you. Sometimes, I was looking at it earlier today, and I don't know if I can find it right now, but in 1 Peter 3:1, it talks about wives and how we are supposed to act as wives, kind of checking ourselves to make sure that we are essentially loving them back to Christ. And when I find it, I'm going to read it. It's at the good old back of this book. But we just have to show up in a different way. You want to be a godly wife, you want to be a wife and whatever, you have to show up and do your part and not let some of these things that we so want to say or do, you have to let the pride go. So I found it in 1 Peter chapter 3. It says, in the same way, you wives must accept the authority of your husbands, because before you could have told me that I would submit to my husband, because for me anyways, again, not understanding marriage, submission meant, like they just had all the authority. I would do whatever they said, all these things. But we're having to understand that we're submitting to a man who is submitting to God. And if he is submitting to a man who is submitting to God, where Ephesians 5:25 says that God, he's going to love us like God loves the church, and all of the things that come with that love, forgiveness, redemption, so many different things, then we're going to be okay. And says, then even if some refuse to obey the good news, your godly lives will speak to them without any words. So we are supposed to continue to carry out living as a Christian wife and woman, and showing them the way, showing them the light, so that they will be won over. They will be won over by observing your pure and reverent lives. And then it just kind of goes on and tells us not to be so concerned about the outward beauty, expensive jewelry, beautiful clothes. We should clothe ourselves instead with the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. We are supposed to be our husband's peace. Period. There are things that are going to come up. Absolutely. This is what the good book says. This is what we have to pray on. It says, this is how the holy women of old made themselves beautiful. They put their trust in God and accepted the authority of their husbands. For instance, Sarah obeyed her husband Abraham and called him her master. You are the daughters if you do what's right without fear of what your husbands might do. So just, again, showing up, submitting to a man who submits to God, knowing that he's got your back. He's going to lead you well if he is following the word. If you guys are keeping the good Lord as the third string, the third person in your marriage. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of good prayer. And where it says husbands, in the same way, I'm just going to read it. In the same way, you husbands must give honor to your wives. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in the gift, God's gift of new life. We are a gift to them. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. And then it just kind of goes down and talk about, finally, all of you should be of one mind, sympathize with each other, love each other, be tenderhearted. Go back to 1 Corinthians, 13, love, and I kind of understand what, that kindness and patience and not boasting and all of those things. What is that really going to look like for your specific marriage? We cannot let other people come in our marriage trying to tell us what to do. And there are times where you're going to want to vent or kind of get things out, but you also have to be super careful about who you vent to and what you vent about. There should not be venting about personal things that your husband will share with you. That is only between you and your husband. And sometimes there may even be things we want to share in groups because we think it's so amazing. Like, my man shared this with me and blah, blah, blah. And that was a moment that he again trusted you with the vulnerability. And say you tell the wrong group and then that comes out, at another time, and the husband looks at you like, man, like, I told you that in confidence. Like, I can't even trust my wife, They have to be able to trust you. Have to be able to trust you with their hearts. And they are more tender than we think. So we have to, continue to love on our men, our young males, our older males, and give them love, give them support, listen without interruptions and judgments and criticism and all the other things that we just have on our mind. When they are coming home, greeting them as if you want them to be there. Even when you guys are mad, maybe y'all had a little spat or argument or a blow up or what have you. All the things I just read, sometimes, you still continue to pray. Be cordial and loving. All of those things, because the enemy would love nothing more than to see you divorced tomorrow or have none of God's children married just because of the power that a husband